Have you ever wondered what it's like to be a passenger flying through Chicago O'Hare International Airport? Have you ever wondered how big the airport is and how challenging it could be to get around? Have you ever wondered what Chicago O'Hare is all about? Join me as we'll experience what it's like to be a passenger at Chicago O'Hare International Airport. Let's get started, everybody. Alrighty guys, so today we're going to be experiencing what it's like to be a passenger flying through Chicago O'Hare International Airport. I really hope you guys are excited for today's video. This is a little bit different compared to what I would normally do for my airport vlog series, but I'll kind of explain that throughout this video because it was a little bit different for this process, and I wanted to make a fun video out of this because I had so much footage and pictures regarding the Chicago O'Hare International Airport, but I also wanted to make plane spotting its full video, so expect that to come in the coming days. But let's get into the experience of what it's like to be a passenger at Chicago O'Hare International Airport. So personally, I was flying in for the Airliners International 2022 convention. This is a convention for aviation enthusiasts with aviation memorabilia items and just hanging out with fellow aviation enthusiasts. So I was flying in for that convention, and I never knew what it was like to fly through Chicago O'Hare International Airport as a passenger. Of course, as an aviation enthusiast, I always find it really enjoyable no matter what, but there were some pretty interesting logistic issues, I would say, that I really wanted to discuss with you guys. So let's kind of talk about the full process, and I'll kind of walk you guys through it. So there'll be plenty of B-roll on the screen for you guys to take a look at what this experience is all about, but let's just start talking through it. So this will kind of be a free talk. I'll kind of just go into all my general thoughts on this, and we'll just dive into the process. So let's get started, everybody. So on June 23rd, 2022, I arrived at Chicago O'Hare International Airport. This is my first time flying United Airlines in general, but also into Chicago O'Hare International Airport. So I knew the general vicinity of where United parked at Chicago, and I also saw some videos in the past, so I kind of knew what to expect to a degree. But once you get there in real life, you can really experience what it's all about, and that's exactly the moment I had when I arrived at the T1 satellite concourse. I believe we arrived in the gate C19. It was a really fun process just getting off and seeing what the airport was all about. So kind of the general assessment that I had as a passenger getting into Chicago O'Hare International Airport, the airport was a little bit rushed. It was a Thursday during the summer, and travel was really rebounding in Chicago especially, so it was not surprising to see this, but it was definitely a little bit congested, but it was really cool. One moment that I also really had, even though it wasn't T3, was just thinking the Home Alone scene at Chicago O'Hare. You guys probably know what I'm talking about, but you kind of get that framework in any concourse at Chicago, at least from what I see with T1, 2, and 3. So that's kind of what I thought of, and that was really cool as well. So that was really cool. I really like the open concept design in the airport too. It did make it feel a little bit more spacious despite so many passengers being there. So that was another really cool touch in my opinion, having all of that to go along with that. So that was also really cool. So I really enjoyed that as well. And there was plenty of amenities as well. As you guys are seeing throughout this B-roll and pictures, there was so many shops. There was so many just different amenities in general. I think there was a massaging place, really so many different Hudson News. You know, if you were looking for something, you could probably find it at the airport. And I feel like that's one of the best elements of Chicago is, you know, with some of these smaller, bigger airports, if you will, like for instance, like a Columbus, for example, or Austin or something like that, you may not get all these amenities, but Chicago and all these concourses really provides plenty of food options, plenty of grab and go options, plenty of sit back and relax options. And that's one of the best things for passengers. And also another really cool part of it is, despite airports being really expensive in general, there was definitely something for everybody in this concourse. And I felt like that was very much appreciated, especially during the chaotic times that traveling can be in general. So I was really glad to get to see that, and that was so cool. And like I said, just again, it was just so busy. I mean, you guys can see from all these pictures and videos how much was going on, and it was really crazy to get to see, but it was really busy. I don't know what else to say. It was very busy. So when you go to Chicago, expect it to be busy. And if you don't like busy airports, you may want to consider connecting through another airport, but it was busy to say the least. Another element, I mean, this is kind of to be expected, but it's kind of hard to grasp until you get to see it by yourself. There was so many United Airlines planes, and this is unsurprising considering this is one of the biggest United Airlines hubs out there. But just for the general passenger and just in general, you'll really be shocked with how many airplanes there are for all the airlines, of course, but United and American particularly, and really getting to see this United all there. You know, obviously I was at Houston earlier in the day, so I already had a little bit of a dose of what it was like, but really getting to see it up close and personal, it's just crazy just to see all these destinations, like one going out to Houston, one going out to Denver, one going out to Washington. You know, they're all going everywhere, and it's really crazy to get to see up close and personal, and that's one of the coolest elements of the hub and spoke model. But for the general passenger, it can definitely be a little bit overwhelming. Also note how I'm making this a general assessment for both aviation enthusiasts and general passengers. I know this is probably going to be predominantly aviation enthusiasts watching this, but if you want to know what it's like flying through Chicago O'Hare International Airport, this is the assessment for you, of course. Another really cool element from the satellite concourse, and you'll experience this throughout many airports in the United States, is the underground walkway was a really cool element. I really liked all the colors that were provided throughout down there, and while it was a very unique experience for the general passenger to be able to walk underground to get over to your concourse for your baggage, just really cool to get to see that, and that was very unique to say the least. So I thought that was really cool. I really enjoyed that, and really reminded me of Atlanta. If you guys know, Atlanta has all those underground walkways to get from concourse to concourse if you don't want to take their train. This was a really cool experience. But of course, with Chicago, you don't have trains from concourse to concourse outside of the pre TSA area. So if you're going to do it in between TSA, then you have to walk through, which is pretty unique. So very cool experience, to say the least. Probably the most dumbfounding situation for me, and it was probably on me because I didn't really think about this, but my mom and I had a really hard time finding the buses. So of course we had a hotel in the area for the convention, so we were going to take the bus so we didn't have to spend money to use an Uber or something like that. And finding the bus pickup area was pretty challenging, believe it or not. So T1 breaks out. I'll put a satellite so you guys can see what I'm talking about. T1 breaks out into an arrivals area, of course, as expected. It's a big oval type of design, if that makes sense. It's kind of hard to explain, but we end up finding that. But then all the buses for the hotels are centralized in the middle, in between all the concourses, which I think that's the right way to describe it, or in between the aprons, something like that. But it was really cool to see it situated like that. I just really wasn't expecting it. So we ended up finding it in the middle there, but we really had to try pretty hard. Sorry about that interruption, everybody, but yeah, it was really crazy seeing it situated in such an oval design. It was very unique. Really wasn't expecting that, but that was really cool, and it makes sense for a large airport to have it all situated like that. I might have missed some signage regarding that, but I wish that it would have been a little bit more obvious where it was. Again, I could have missed something for sure since we were trying to get to the convention, but it's one of those things you just got to improvise, see what happens, learn from it, and that's exactly what we did. But for general passenger, definitely look into that, where you're going to be arriving, whether it's going to be taxi, bus, whatever the case is to get to your destination. I know there's also trains as well, I think, that go to the O'Hare Airport, so definitely want to find where those are situated and just figure out what you're doing. So definitely one of those things, but hey, it happens. So that's how I got out of Chicago O'Hare International Airport. Getting in was actually kind of challenging as well, but it ended up always working out because you just got to improvise, especially as an aviation enthusiast at a big airport, because usually I connect through airports and able to plan that out and spotting and all that fun stuff. But in terms of getting out and in, usually not something that I do much. And I usually am a light traveler, so I don't check bags and that sort of thing either. So that's kind of what happened here. So let's talk about the outbound leg. So I was flying on United again. This time we were not going to the satellite concourse. We were going to the main landside concourse. And let's talk about how that works. So let's see here what I was going to mention about this. Starting with T1 once again. So what ended up happening was on the buses, you were supposed to tell the driver, and it makes perfect sense, just didn't think about it. I thought they were probably going to stop at every terminal, but it makes perfect sense. You need to tell them where you're going to be departing from, and I did not know that, so I did not tell our driver where I was stopping at, and ended up, he overdrove Terminal 1. I didn't know if he was going back or not, so once we got to the American Airlines Terminal and Terminal 3, I realized that he wasn't going back, so I was like, I'll just get off here and make it work. So what ended up happening is I walked in the American Airlines check-in area at O'Hare. Really cool, excuse me, old livery American Airlines logo. That was a really cool. I was so glad to get to see that. So that was fantastic. I really enjoyed that. That was a blast. But it ended up working out, and I was so glad to get to see that, because from there there was another underground walkway that went from T3's check-in area for American to T1 check-in area for United. So went underground under all the roads and everything. So that was really cool to get the walk through, and I ended up finding my way through there. So that worked really well. There was a fellow enthusiast that I got to meet as well that kind of led me over there, not really intentionally, but this is what I love about aviation. Everybody knows what they're doing. Usually you'll find somebody that's a little bit more educated than you on subjects like that. So always really appreciate the help of people like that, and that was a bunch of fun to get to do. So really enjoyed that, and that took us over to the United Airlines check-in area, which was pretty impressive to say the least. So like I said, we navigated over there through the walkway really well, and then by the time we got up there, really quick check in TSA. So I ended up doing a self-check on the United, which ended up working out well. No major notes, wasn't checking a bag or anything, so it was very simple. I got my boarding passes, went through TSA, took probably 15 minutes or so. It wasn't very long, so that worked out well. And then I honestly over anticipated really bad because we had plenty of time. So by the time I arrived in there, it was time to do some plane spotting. So that's exactly what we did. And some notes on that. Like I said, the plane spotting video will be coming soon, but in general, the landside terminal was very nice. Really good infrastructure in there. Plenty of options. Once again, pretty much everything I said about the satellite concourse applies here. It was probably a little bit tighter than the satellite concourse, believe it or not. It was really hard to get through some areas, especially one of the toughest designs about aviation terminals in general is when you have these restaurants and other places that require lines on the walking area. It's really hard to navigate through sometimes when you have a big line going into a restaurant, for instance, and you have to navigate around that. So that's another note that I would recommend trying to walk to the farthest outside as possible. So in this case, you're probably watching the video right now. Walk all the way. I don't even know if I did this, but just thinking about this is how I do it now. Walk all the way as far away from those lines as possible so you can navigate as well. Another very interesting thought along airports, I don't think this will ever change, but it is something to note, is there's not really any particular way of walking. You know, obviously down the road, you drive to the right, the way you're going, and this isn't really implied in walking through terminals. You just see a bunch of people, either you have a big stack going one way or you have multiple people going at each other and that sort of thing, and just people trying to get through in general. And you see this many places like concerts and that sort of thing. So my recommendation is to just try to find the most open area. Unfortunately, this isn't a Tulsa International Airport, or a another small airport would be like Fayetteville, Arkansas, that sort of thing. You just got to navigate through these big airports. And it seems like airports that are wider, it's usually a little bit more manageable. Like for instance, at Dallas, usually people will stay on the side, the right side, usually of the way they're walking. So for instance, people going one way will go like on the right side and the other way goes on the left, if that makes sense from your vantage point. But at Chicago, it just felt like a complete cluster, and to say the least, and just getting through there was pretty challenging. So my recommendation is just try to find the hole, and there are areas where it opens up really nicely, like for instance where there's gates, usually it empties out a little bit and that sort of thing. So I would just recommend trying to work your way around it, and the videos probably show that pretty well, better than I can explain it. So that's what I would recommend in that department. Okay. From there, one of the really cool elements of Chicago I noticed is there was quite a few really good windows to just look at planes out, obviously for the general public, but also for aviation plane spotters like myself. There was plenty of areas to do some plane spotting, which I really appreciated. Chicago also had a really unique mesh of seating, which was very unique to get to see. One of the coolest elements, and I don't know if I show it, hopefully I did, but there were some plush seats, if that makes sense. They were like round circular objects that were really easy to get to sit near the window on, which was really nice. And then they also had some normal seats. I think they had some lie down areas too, so there was really a nice variety of seating out there. The satellite concourse was more standard seating in general, but the land side definitely had some unique seating, so that was very much appreciated, and a big perk by Chicago where you get to find some space to do some things, but for the most part it was pretty crowded in those gate areas. This is a little bit saturated though to a degree, because there was a Lufthansa outbound flight and an A350 going to Munich, a United 777 flight, my flight going to Denver of course, and there was plenty of mainline flights as well. There was a 320 and some other planes I believe out there too, so it's one of those to expect for sure. And then other passengers getting in early, because kind of like myself, you don't know what TSA is going to be on a given day, but give it to Chicago. They did their best. I'm sure there's peak times as well, so my biggest advice for Chicago in general is give yourself enough time, and if you have extra time, utilize it how you'd like. If you have work to get done on your computer, go find an open area to work and go work. If you want to go plane spotting, I would recommend going plane spotting. If you just want to sit on your phone for 30 minutes or an hour or whatever you want to do, but I just recommend getting to the airport early, especially big airports like Chicago where you may have an accident. You may not realize that you're accidentally at the wrong drop-off spot, or you can't find your bus shuttle, or you can't find the train that you need to take, or you can't get to the places. And I'm sure that this is just coming from a mid-airport enthusiast like myself. Tulsa, I'm used to being able to get through the airport within 20 minutes. At Chicago, it's a toss-up. I'm sure at 5 a.m. it's a complete mess, and I'm sure at, like when I came in there at 2:30 on a Saturday, it's probably not as bad at times. So it really is all hit or miss. So that's why I would recommend definitely giving yourself plenty of time, because you'd rather be early than not make your flights. So granted, most flights out of Chicago, there's multiple, even flights like Munich and Frankfurt, I think are 2 daily. So there's multiple options for sure, but it's never worth risking it. But that was also really cool to get to see Lufthansa get to park at T1, even though obviously they're an international airline. I'm sure that makes it a little bit more complicated for some locals trying to figure out, okay, what terminal am I going to go out of? And that's another item as well, is if you're unfamiliar, definitely get there early. It just makes the most sense, and you just want to have plenty of time in case something goes wrong. So there's also United Sky Clubs and different places to hang out too. So if you have those benefits, I'd recommend taking advantage of them for sure at Chicago, because the infrastructure is in place for that. I ended up utilizing a McDonald's for my lunch that day. Not the healthiest option by any means, but quite frankly, it's pretty hard to get many healthy options in an airport. So sometimes you just got to make do with what you have. And hey, as long as you get fulfilled, then that works. And the line took probably 20 minutes, maybe somewhere in there. Because I remember I was plane spotting, and then I decided to take a break because it was a little bit slower, and there was a 350 in my spotting area way as well. And the flight was going to board in probably 40 minutes from then. So I thought that would be a good time. And it turned out to be good. And yeah, it worked out really well. So another way to avoid the lines is if you want to buy onboard snacks. Honestly, the prices are pretty comparable to the airport. You can also bring a snack on board too. That's another option. So there's quite a few ways to end up getting fulfilled in those desires, and many ways depending your budget. So that's just another passenger experience to note as well. So that's also an option. And yeah, there's quite a few ways in general. Speaking of that Lufthansa I was mentioning earlier, that E350, I wasn't going to mention much plane spotting in this video, but that's just too good. I think any person in general would just be able to be just shook in general with how cool that was to get to see a big plane right in front of your face like that. That was truly like ramp side access, because literally the nose was probably somewhere in the ballpark of like 20-30 feet away from the terminal itself, and it was really cool to get to see it that close. So that was really cool. Really enjoyed that, and that was a really fun experience. And then lastly, the really big experience, especially if you're flying a bigger aircraft, is the boarding experience out of Chicago. I was boarding a 777, so by default that took quite a bit. Luckily though, I believe we did board with 2 jet bridges, which was helpful, so that made the process go much faster, and it was really cool just to get to see such a big aircraft boarded. But yeah, really recommend being alert and having your cell phone ready for your app alerts, whatever airline you may be flying, excuse me. And being sure you're caught up to date, because your gate can change on the fly, your boarding time can change on the fly. You may not know if you get delayed. So I'd recommend hanging out in the vicinity of your gate and just making sure, because I was probably 2 gates down, I could just monitor everything that was going on down there, because I didn't want to miss my flight, of course. So I would just highly recommend monitoring what's going on so that you know what the case is. So for instance, if you're boarding a flight, I would recommend being in the gate proximity and having your app alerts on for whatever airline you may be flying, in this case United, so that you're aware of what's going on and that you know it. So that's what's recommended on my side, because you really got to know what's going on so that you're fulfilled in those ways, so you don't miss your flight. And it's very easy to get tied up in Chicago for whatever reason, TSA, that sort of thing. So I highly recommend being available and ready to go so that you don't miss anything. So this is a good time having those text messages enabled and all that fun stuff, emails, whatever the case may be, so that you're on the same page and don't miss anything. So yeah, the Chicago passenger experience is pretty unique for a variety of reasons. Probably the best element of Chicago is all the different amenities their terminals provide, and also the fairly quick TSA process and easy check-in for most people. Obviously, this is going to vary on the day depending what you may get in terms of weather and all that fun stuff, and just in general, sometimes it may not go your way, but I would just recommend being patient no matter what. And also the time of day is also critical for that as well. But the amenities are really good at Chicago. It's like any other big airport. You have plenty of options. I would try to go on off times as well, even though it's not ideal usually. It helps so that you can get short lines and all that fun stuff if you're for these various places. The biggest con for sure is just how crowded it is. It's probably one of the most crowded airports in the United States, but considering the amount of flights that airport has, it's truly incredible to see that it's honestly not worse. And they are working long term to expand the terminals, I believe, so that will be helpful. And I just recommend in general, when it comes to Chicago, just being ready to go at all times, because you never know what's going to change. It could change on the fly. Your gate could change. Your aircraft could change. So many different elements could change just like that. So I would recommend being ready for all of those. And yeah, if you do fly through Chicago, best of luck to you. I thought I'd make this video just in general to recap my experience, because normally I do a check-in vlog. and I usually would describe all the elements I did in this video, but I thought I would, make it more seem like what the experience was rather than just my experience, because you really do want to know before you go into these airports what the experience is going to be like. So hopefully this video was helpful to you guys. The plane spotting video will be coming out soon, so if you're interested in what planes we're flying in that day, definitely be on the lookout for that. You can also check out all my other Airliners International content along with the spotting vlog from Chicago too, to really see what the airport's all about. So I highly recommend checking that out if you haven't got a chance to. It's a bunch of fun, and it was a great airport. So I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. Again, thank you guys for watching. If you have any questions about the process, please let me know. I've connected through the airport twice, and I've done the full deboarding out of the terminal and getting into the terminal and boarding process once. I know that there's many other people that are locals to Chicago that probably have better answers than I do too. So, but I would just recommend in general being ready to go at all times, and your experience should be pretty good. So with that being said, that will do for today's video. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really hope you guys enjoyed today's video. My name is Redriveraviation. I want to thank you guys so much for watching. Take it easy, everybody. Stay safe. Just process. Do you love and love what you do? My name is Redriveraviation. I want to thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys soon as Redriveraviation is signing off.